Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be getting our lab set up for my new series on system administration and DevOps. So let's get into it. So what does this series cover? This will be a series that's going to cover the fundamentals of Linux system administration and DevOps. We're going to start with the basics with Ansible and Kubernetes. Following that, we will get deeper into certificates, Windows, Active Directory, and more command line fundamentals. So how are you intended to use these videos? So every video there will be an assignment. This assignment will be something quick, usually about 15 to 30 minutes. Later down the line there may be more, closer to an hour. But they will be straightforward and we will go over everything that you'll need to do it in the videos, or we'll have documentation linked to get to it. Now, all of the code samples that I will be doing in these videos will be on the Git repository linked in the description. These videos will be released on a weekly basis, with the exception of video 1, which should come out in the next few days. So now we know what this series is about. Let's get into setting it up. So if you're running a Linux system already, you're ahead of the game. You can go ahead and skip to the section titled Ansible. Otherwise, if you're using a Mac or Windows, stay tuned. We are going to be setting up a VirtualBox VM on each of these machines running Ubuntu 20.04. Now, you can use certain tools to allow you to do this locally, but for the sake of simplicity, we are going to have an environment where everybody is going to be on the same platform. That way we can ensure that there won't be any weird issues popping up because of your platform. If you're running an M1 Mac, unfortunately, there is no official support for emulation or virtual machines. So for this, I would recommend finding some other system that you have lying around the house, install Linux on it to get that set up, or set up an Azure or AWS instance and run it off of there. Here I have a completely fresh Windows install. We're going to go ahead and install VirtualBox by typing in VirtualBox, or going to the link in the description, going to Downloads, and going to Windows Hosts. This will then download a file, executable, in which you're going to execute. Next, leave everything as default, yes, and install. It will likely come up and ask you if you want to install an extension. If that does happen, go ahead and click install. Great. Go ahead and click finish. Now you will need to download the Ubuntu server image. Go ahead and type in Ubuntu server, or go to the link in the description, hit manual server installation, and download Ubuntu server. This is what you'll likely be presented with. Go ahead and click new, type in the name of the VM. We're going to choose development, type Linux, and then you're going to choose Ubuntu 64-bit. Unfortunately, I do not have the 64-bit option, as I am running this inside of a virtual machine, and I do not have nested virtualization on it. But you likely will not, so you will just need to turn on, set it to the 64-bit. For RAM, 1 GB is fine for running an Ubuntu server instance. I would recommend upping it to 2 GB if you have it, but it's certainly not required. 10 GB is plenty. The default is fine here. Just click create, next, and create. Great. So now you have the virtual machine created. Now you need to edit the settings. So in the settings, go ahead and go to System, Processor, and change this to 2. Once you've done that, go to Storage, click where it says Empty, click the disk icon, choose a disk file, and choose the disk that we just downloaded. Now go to network, change the network adapter from attached to NAT to attached to bridged adapter, and then click OK. Like I said, I'm running this inside of a VM, so it's not going to let me save it, but for you it should be fine. If it isn't, please leave a comment. Now you should be ready to go. Go ahead and hit start, and then skip to the section for installing Ubuntu server, which will go through the install process. Alright, so now we're going to get you set up on a Mac. So go ahead and open up your browser and type in VirtualBox. Go to the website, or you can click the link in the description, go to Downloads, and then click OSX Hosts. This will then download your DMG, once it's finished, go ahead and open it. Double click on virtualbox.package, allow it to run, click allow again, click continue, install, enter in your password, and let this complete. It may pop up and ask you to install an extension, or it may ask you to allow it, in which case you would just need to go to your system set preferences, security and privacy, general, and then it should show up here asking you to allow. Okay, the installation was successful. You can click close and move to trash, exit out of here, and now you should be able to open the VirtualBox application. Okay. And whenever you start it for the first time, you'll likely see this screen. Great. That means that we can go ahead and get started. So you will need the Ubuntu server image. So go ahead and type in Ubuntu server. Get Ubuntu server, manual server installation, and download Ubuntu server 20.04.2 LTS. I already have it downloaded, so I'll go ahead and start setting it up. Once it's downloaded, go ahead and click new. We're going to give it a name. I'm going to name it development. We're going to change it to Linux, and you're going to set it to Ubuntu 64-bit. As I'm running this on an M1 Mac, just to show you how to get the process, it's not going to let me choose 64-bit because it doesn't support that architecture. Go ahead and leave the memory size as default. You can increase it to 2 gigs, and I would recommend that. It'll allow you to do a little bit more, and it might run a little bit faster. Go ahead and click create a virtual hard disk now. 10 gigs is perfectly fine for what we'll need, so just leave that as default. Alright, so now you have the VM created. Now we're going to go ahead and edit the settings. Open settings, go to systems processor, change this processor from 1 to 2 CPUs. Go to storage, change this from empty to choose our disk file that we had downloaded, which was right here, and then go to network and change the network adapter attached to NAT, change that to bridged adapter. Great. After this, you can click OK, and then you can click Start. Once it's started, you can go on to the next section where I'll show you how to install Ubuntu server. So once you get to this screen, go ahead and hit English. Leave everything here as default unless you have a non-standard keyboard layout or variant. Click Done. Now here you do want to make sure that you do have an IP address. So as you can see here, mine is 192.168.10.164. If you do not have anything here, then there's likely something wrong with your network configuration, and you will need to post a comment or something, and somebody should be able to help you out if I don't. Go ahead and done. leave the proxy empty unless you have a proxy, then enter it. Leave the mirrors default. Now here you're going to leave use entire disk on and just hit down until you get to done. Leave this as done. This is just going to format everything that's on the virtual disk that you created, which should be completely empty and it shouldn't erase anything. But if you do like pass through a disk or anything, it will erase everything on it, so be careful with that. So we're going to go ahead and enter in our information. I'm going to give it the name development-yt so it doesn't conflict with anything else. Alright, great. Go ahead and hit done after you've entered the information. Now here you do want to install the OpenSSH server. I would recommend enabling this even if you're not going to use it immediately. It will be helpful down the road. Go ahead and tab down to done. And then here we are not going to install anything. Go ahead and hit done. At this point it's going to finish installing the required packages, install any updates, and it'll go ahead and reboot. So I'll wait and then I'll get back to you as soon as it's ready. Great, so now you should see the option at the bottom says reboot now, and once you click that, you should go ahead and try to unmount everything. It's okay if there's some failures here. It will say remove the installation medium. You do not have to do that. By default, VirtualBox should automatically unmount the drive that you have plugged in. Just hit enter and it should reboot. So it looks like for me it did not go ahead and detach that disk. So I'm going to have to go ahead and do that manually. Great. So once you've reached the login prompt, as you can see up here, you should be good to go. Now there might be some extra text displayed afterwards. Don't worry about that. Just hit enter and it'll bring it back. So now you can log in with that username and password that you did during setup. Great. Now you're logged in. Great. So now we're ready to install Ansible. If you're already running Linux before, this is where you should have skipped into the video. Now, there is one thing to keep in mind if you are running Linux already, is that you might be running a different distribution, so your package manager will likely be different. So you want to look up how to install it for your distribution. If you're running Linux, you should probably already know what your distribution is. We're using Ubuntu, so this has apt. So the first thing that we're going to go ahead and do is update our repositories. Running apt update. This basically just tells Linux, hey, here are the packages that are available for install. Okay, now we're going to install Ansible. Hit Y. Let this finish. Shouldn't take very long. Great. And now if you want to test it, type ansible-playbook, enter, and you should be presented with this help screen. Alright, so now we're going to run some sample code that I have. So we're going to go ahead and clone the repository. Repository is linked in the description, as I said before. You can copy this link from the description. Be a lot easier, but you will probably have to SSH in order to do that. Just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and type it in manually here. Leave. Great. So now you should have a folder in your home directory. We're going to go ahead and go in there and go in that directory. And there's another one in here. Let me make this bigger. There's another folder in here called that starts with 0. We're going to go ahead and go inside that. And inside here there's a main.yml file. Great, if you're seeing this, you should be good to go. We're going to go on and run this command, ansible-playbook main.yml --ask become password. Sorry, ask become pass. This will be linked in the description. You'll be able to see the command that I ran. Okay, so go ahead and enter in your user's password. Hit enter. Great. If you see it says changed here and it says that there's no errors, that means that it was successful. And if you go ahead and go to your root directory, you should see a file called itworks.txt. You can go ahead and cut it out so you can see what's in it. All it says is it works. Great, if you've gotten to this part, then that means you're ready to go. Go ahead and go on to the next part of the video where we're going to go over the homework assignment. So what's next? So in the next video, we're going to be covering the basics of Ansible. We're going to go over what exactly Ansible is, what it does, what it should be used for, what it shouldn't be used for, what are some use cases that I'm currently using it for, and what are the most common use cases. So between now and then, we're going to have a homework assignment, and this is going to be a very, very simple assignment. Inside of the Git repository, which will be linked below, there is another repository that is going to have our homework assignments in it. This one is going to be labeled the same as the video, 0-lab setup, where you're going to have a similar situation. You're going to have a main.yml file, and you're going to have another folder that's going to contain a file. Now, you're going to want to copy this file to a directory on your system. That directory will be given, and you'll want to go ahead and look at the documentation for Ansible and understand how that works. It's very simple. You're copying a file from the local system to somewhere else on the system. So find more details about that in the description. Go ahead and check it out. Shouldn't take you very long, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.